Welcome back to Cool Seminary Tutorials. Hi, I'm Professor Wendy. Today, in part 2 of the Religious Freedom series, we'll take a quick look at the foundational principles of religious freedom that long ago were hammered out in U.S. history and embedded in the U.S. Bill of Rights. In today's video, we'll look at what prompted the then uncommon experiment of religious freedom that is ever since enjoyed by every U.S. citizen, and just what difference does religious freedom make anyway, especially for those who don't think of themselves as very religious. By the way, if you don't think you're very religious, you may need religious freedom most of all. Baptist Roger Williams in Rhode Island, Quaker William Penn in Pennsylvania, Catholic Cecil Calvert in Maryland, and Quakers Lord Berkeley and George Carteret were all too familiar with the many downsides of established religion, from which many had had to flee with their lives. So they established from the very beginning of their colonies religious freedom for all Christian faiths, which was later extended to persons of any religious persuasion, including atheism. As historian Winthrop Hudson put it, by the time of the American Revolution, of the original 13 colonies, 4, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, had long been fully committed to a policy of religious liberty, and the Anglican establishments in 5 of the remaining colonies, in New York, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, quickly toppled after the outbreak of hostilities when the supporting prop of English authority was withdrawn. Only in Virginia and in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New Hampshire was there any delay. And even in these 4 areas, the struggle for religious liberty was carried on during the war years as part of the revolutionary struggle itself. This commitment to freedom of conscience had deep roots. William Livingston, who in 1776 became the governor of New Jersey, asserted, "The greatest number of our inhabitants are descended from those who, with a brave and invincible spirit, repelled the Spanish tyranny in the Netherlands, or from those who, in opposition to the arbitrary measures of King Charles I, were constrained to seek a refuge from the relentless sword of persecution in the then inhospitable wilds of America. From such ancestors we inherit the highest relish for civil and religious liberty." It was the colony of Virginia that furnished some of the most prominent leaders and 2 of the most important documents to reflect what became the new nation's unwavering commitment to religious freedom. Not only did Thomas Jefferson draft the Declaration of Independence, but also the Bill for Establishing Religious Freedom, which was adopted by the Virginia Assembly in 1786. Together, Virginians Jefferson and James Madison crafted the nation's path toward adoption of the First Amendment to the Constitution, which defined and guaranteed the right to religious freedom for all U.S. citizens. Hear these profound words from Thomas Jefferson, which have become part of the birthright of a great nation and of all those who uphold the principles of religious freedom. "To compel a man to furnish contributions of money for the propagation of opinions which he disbelieves and abhors is sinful and tyrannical. The proscribing any citizen as unworthy the public confidence, unless he profess or renounce this or that religious opinion, is depriving him injuriously of those privileges and advantages to which, in common with his fellow citizens, he has a natural right. The opinions of men are not the object of civil government, nor under its jurisdiction. It is time enough for the rightful purposes of civil government for its officers to interfere when principles break out into overt acts against peace and good order. Truth is great, and will prevail if left to herself. She is the proper and sufficient antagonist to error, and has nothing to fear from the conflict unless by human interposition disarmed of her natural weapons, free argument and debate, errors ceasing to be dangerous when it is permitted freely to contradict them." This document, which became a blueprint for the new nation's policy on religious freedom, concluded, "We, the General Assembly of Virginia, do enact that no man shall be compelled to frequent or support any religious worship, place, or ministry whatsoever, nor shall be enforced, restrained, molested, or burdened in his body or goods, nor shall otherwise suffer on account of his religious opinions or belief, but that all men shall be free to profess and by argument to maintain their opinions in matters of religion, and that the same shall in no wise diminish, enlarge, or affect their civil capacities. It was not only secular politicians who argued vehemently for religious liberty. Christians and others remembered well the religious persecution they and their ancestors had endured both in Europe and in some of the colonies. A powerful alliance emerged between secular deistic political leaders and Christians. For example, it was a Baptist preacher, Connecticut-born Isaac Backus, who in 1779 drafted a Bill of Rights for the state of Massachusetts, including the following widely shared Christian perspective on religious liberty. As God is the only worthy object of all religious worship, and nothing can be true religion but a voluntary obedience unto his revealed will, of which each rational soul has an equal right to judge for itself, every person has an unalienable right to act in all religious affairs according to the full persuasion of his own mind, where others are not injured thereby. George Washington became the first president of the new nation in 1789, the same year the new Congress adopted the Bill of Rights. The First Amendment in the Bill of Rights established for the United States the fundamental policy of religious freedom that has since helped to define both the nature and success of what is often called the great American experiment of human rights and liberty. The First Amendment outlines clearly and emphatically several areas of freedom most cherished by citizens and most coveted by those who immigrate to the United States of America or who desire to immigrate here. Short and concise, this amendment, which is at the core of the birthright of a U.S. citizen, reads simply, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. It was not immediately clear to citizens of the new nation just what this would mean in their own personal circumstances. While most of the individual states had already adopted measures that guaranteed religious freedom, citizens of the new nation were anxious to know what it would be like to have religious freedom interpreted and defined by a national government rather than by the individual state where they had chosen to live. So President Washington was inundated with letters from Baptists, Presbyterians, Quakers, Roman Catholics, Jews, and others who expressed anxious hopes concerning the safety of their own liberties in matters of religion. The very first president of the U.S. responded in ways that set the precedent for those who would follow. Washington assured the Baptists in Virginia, I beg you will be persuaded that no one would be more zealous than myself to establish effectual barriers against the horrors of spiritual tyranny and every species of religious persecution. To the General Assembly of Presbyterians he replied, all men within our territories are protected in worshiping the deity according to the dictates of their consciences. Washington commended the Roman Catholics for the patriotic part they had taken in the Revolution and wished them as faithful subjects of our free government every temporal and spiritual felicity. And to a Jewish congregation, Washington declared, happily, the government of the United States, which gives bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens in giving it on all occasions their effectual support. It is no mere coincidence that in the First Amendment, freedom of religion goes hand in hand with freedom of speech, assembly, and press. Clearly in the U.S. it is not expected that religious expression be restricted to a quiet, private practice or hidden underground as merely a personal matter. Nor is it expected that one's religion will not impact one's political opinions or behavior. Rather, those who framed and advocated passionately for the religious liberty enjoyed as citizens of the U.S. assumed that religion, in all its diverse expressions, helps to provide for a distinctive good beneficial to all citizens. They also assumed that religion, in all its diversity, would help to create and undergird an ethic for our lives together that is part of the essential fabric or glue of a free society. In the next video, part 3 of the Religious Freedom series, we'll take a look at the ethic and the hope afforded to citizens of nations and of the world through policies and practices of religious freedom. I'm Professor Wendy. Thanks for watching. Please take a moment to let me know if you liked the video and click to subscribe to Cool Seminary Tutorials. Most of all, have fun learning!